Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the introduction. Great to have you over here, and great to be with you here. I would like to share some examples, yes, of the collaboration between the Netherlands and China, and we'll go through it and have time for questions afterwards. Let's first look at the broader context. Because you see, in the coming decades, we all know we will have a strong increase in population, plus 2 to 3 billion people in the next 30, 40 years. So that's even more than one China in addition. That's quite a bit. But next to that, many people, also 2 to 3 billion people, will increase in wealth from the low income to the middle income. And that also has a major effect on food and food demand. And when you combine those two, it means that there will be an enormous increase in the demand for food, and especially in the demand for high quality protein. So the people going to the middle class income, they will ask more high quality protein, and that means almost a doubling in demand for vegetables, dairy, and meat. So when you look at it and when you quantify it, that means that in the next 4 or 5 decades, we have 40 years, we have to produce more food than in the past 4,000 years. So it is a tremendous challenge. It stops. It stops. It still works or not? I think I will keep this one. That means that there is a tremendous challenge, but at the same time, that's also a big opportunity, because there is almost no second industry in the world who can predict for sure that there will be a growth in demand in so many years ahead. 1 year ago, we had the president of China, President Xi Jinping, and his wife over for a state visit to the Netherlands. And he especially asked himself to be informed about the Dutch Agri&Food model, and especially the success of the Dutch Agri&Food model. Because in China and in the Netherlands, we have about the same amount of land per capita available, and yet in China you need to import quite some food, and in the Netherlands we export 70%, 7-0. So he wanted to get background on it, and very good. And he was impressed and asked afterwards for more collaboration to increase food security, so to increase the food production in China, and at the same time improve the quality, especially the food safety, as the Chinese consumers have a higher demand also on quality and safety. And what is then special to our situation, to the food and agri in the Netherlands? Well, when you think of it, we are only a very small country in size, only 200 by 200 kilometers roughly, so 40,000 square kilometers. And in that area we are densely populated. We have 17 million people in that area. But in that small country, with that small country, we are the second largest exporter of food and flowers in the world. Second largest exporter in terms of value. So the US, big country, is the number one with little over 100 euros of export, and the Netherlands, a billion of export, and the Netherlands has over 80 billion euros of export a year. And the major sectors in our country are greenhouse horticulture, so vegetables, and livestock, dairy, pork, and poultry. And you see, when you look at it from the coming demand in the world, that's especially these products. It is vegetables, it is dairy, it is meat. And when you look at our country, you could characterize our system as very highly productive, because we have limited amount of land, labor is expensive, so we have to be extremely productive per hectare or per animal to survive. Secondly, we have to be very efficient. Because of those high costs, we have to be efficient to be competitive. And we realize that when we compare it to others, that we are knowledge intensive, so that we use, let's say, new technologies and new knowledge as soon as possible. And when you look into the value chain in the Netherlands, farmers are the basis for it. We have family-owned farmers, so a long history and tradition within family farms, and they are able to produce 5 times the added value, 5 times the European average. So at a very high level. But it is not only the farmers' level that is strong, it's also the agribusiness. So the supply and processing industry in our country is very strong in the various sectors. And we have 4 companies, 4 food and agri companies based in the Netherlands, Dutch companies who are in the world top 40. So that's a lot for a small country. And finally, we are also in this field leading in science. Our Wageningen University and Research Center is, in terms of science, in terms of publications, the #1 in its domain in the world. So it's from all the angles, it's a strong focus on food and agri. And that we call also the secret behind the success. Because yes, we have good fertile soils, yes, we have a very good climate, but when you don't use it in the right way, you don't produce so much. So there is more than soil and climate only. And that is what we always call the golden triangle. The close collaboration between private industry, government, and knowledge institutes. With private industry and our system in the lead. So not the government, not science, private industry in the lead. And that close collaboration between the three means that there are very short lines between them, so no walls between them, but short lines, that there is a high commitment in setting targets and achieving future activities, and always public-private partnerships. So public-private partnerships in financing, research and innovation. And to give an example, Wageningen is the only university in the Netherlands which is not part of the University of Science, or the Ministry of Science, but is part of the Ministry of Agriculture, and nowadays the Ministry of Economic Affairs. So close to the golden triangle, and yes, that is also the basis of what we call the top sector policy. In the Netherlands, we have defined top sectors who are important for the economy in the future. The economy from export, income and employment. And here, food, agri, horticulture is one of them. And there it is also organized with this triangle in place. So the triangle discusses the various items within the top sector and sets together the strategy for the future. And I would give 3 examples in which our sector, so not an individual company, but the sector as a whole, in which our sector collaborates with China. Because we do a lot within the European Union, also a big part of our export is within the European Union, but the worldwide growth is not in Europe. The worldwide growth is, among others, here in China. And that's why there is a lot of attention and collaboration between the Netherlands and China, also stimulated by the visit of your president last year. And I would give 3 examples of research and innovation, which for us are a good basis to collaborate as a sector and which gives companies the opportunity to build on. And one is applied research, an applied research center in horticulture. One is a research and innovation center in dairy, and one is what we call the Holland Center to support business and also start in e-commerce, an important development here, as we heard yesterday morning. Let's briefly discuss them and see what we learned from that. The first one is the Sino-Europe Agricultural Development Center. That started officially in 2011. And that is part of a long-standing relationship with one of the provinces here in China, Fujian province. And I would stress here long-standing, because yes, market is developing very rapidly, but for a strong relationship, you need time. You need to build up the relationship. China is not a country, as you know, but foreigners often underestimate. China is not a country to come in quickly and do business and be out again. You have to build up a relationship. And this relationship with Wageningen in this case started already in 2004. So it took 7 years to do projects and work together. And then Fujian government decided to build an applied research center, especially for the relationship to further work on. So Fujian province took the initiative, funded the applied research center, with the support of the Dutch government, with the support of Wageningen, and now also including the private industry. Private industry from the Netherlands and private industry from China. The center is located in the south of Fujian province, in Zhangzhou development zone, and created at a new road which is called the Wageningen Road. Important here is that it is applied research, applied, because you may notice that, as in many countries, also here there is a wide gap between university research, which is fundamental, and applied research necessary for companies to build on for innovation. And in our system we have many institutes in between, type of institutes, to bridge that gap from fundamental to applied. Here it is not so much available. So this center is especially focusing on helping producers and industry apply knowledge for their circumstances. So often there is a little research, often it is also modifying the available research to make it happen in the field. And we think this is an excellent model also for companies to build on, to use knowledge from everywhere around the world and make it available for producers and industry. We started in horticulture to focus on. That was what the institute was built for. But we are now broadening to food processing, where the Food Valley in the Netherlands, the Golden Triangle, also helps to develop that center. And companies also come in to, from a commercial point of view, to build on it and work on it. So we think this type of institutes can have a good future in China to really be close to the industry and help modify the knowledge to practical application. A second example started from the industry. It is the Dairy Development Center, the Sino-Dutch Dairy Development, which started 1.5 years ago, was launched in November 2013. And here, the biggest dairy company in the Netherlands, the Royal Friesland Campina, took the initiative. And why? Friesland Campina had a very fast increase in export of baby milk powder to China because of food safety reasons. You had a problem with melamine here in China, in dairy, and people did not trust the baby milk powder especially. And they were looking around in the world for quality, safe baby milk powder. And the Netherlands was selected for that. And within 2 years, the export of Friesland Campina to China in baby milk powder only passed 1 billion euros a year. So it went very fast. But they said, and I fully agree, that cannot last forever. China will not always be dependent on imports. So at the same time, you need to work on improving the system itself. And that's why they took the initiative to use part of the money they earned to invest in this Dairy Development Center, which is located in China, in Beijing, and which has the collaboration of Friesland Campina as a dairy company, the China Agricultural University, based in Beijing, and the Wageningen University and Research Center. And the aim is twofold. to increase productivity, so to produce more dairy, because dairy, the demand for dairy is increasing, and especially to improve food safety, to show and to make and to help it happen that, let's say, the quality control system in the chain as a whole improves. So it is an integrated approach, not only the final product working on, but throughout the production chain. They call it from grass to glass, so focusing on all stages of the production chain. And when you think of it, when you have a problem in the production chain, it is a tremendous amount of work to improve it. And to have all the factors of the animal feed that's going in, and animal health care, and at the farmer's level, and in the processing, and in the transport, and in the storage, that all those stages improve their system. And also make it transparent to the consumer, because to gain back the trust of the consumer, that is a lot of work. So they include many activities in this center. It is research, new products, also PhD research, so from fundamental to applied. They do training here in China with the people involved in the field and in the factories. They have an extensive program to bring people to the Netherlands, to their own facilities in the Netherlands, and get a Dutch dairy experience, just as a way to visualize our system. There is an expertise center being built up here in China to try out for innovation, try out ideas and products. They have publications, once again, science, so fundamental publication and applied, and also exposure. So when the president was over, they also presented themselves, the CEO was involved to present this approach in China. And we think this combination of export for the short term and at the same time build up joint research and innovation here in China is an excellent model for companies, at least for Dutch companies in the future. And the third example is a bit broader, built on the first two. The third and final example is what we call the Holland Center. Here, as said before already, there are many opportunities in China, but it's also difficult for companies from outside to come in and be active. Well, the big companies we have in the program this morning, they can do it themselves, but smaller companies, it's often difficult. So we have a business platform to help those companies realizing more business in China. That was launched last year, October, and that was not an initiative of one company, but of the sector as a whole, the Topsector Agri&Food, and business people, the Xi Group here in China. So not government people, but business people. This is very much initiated from the business. And members of the Holland Center are leading agribusiness companies in the Netherlands. They drive the center, and they help make sure that it really leads to business. So it's not a talking group, but an action group. It should lead to business. And many activities are in the center. It is demand-driven, so when companies ask for it, we try to facilitate. But two activities are especially of importance. That is matchmaking, tailor-made matchmaking, and that's e-commerce. And the first one is important, tailor-made, because how do you find a right customer or a right partner for a joint venture or for any other type of collaboration? It's not so easy. So we organize them tailor-made. So we know beforehand what companies from the Netherlands are in the matchmaking, and we are looking through the Chinese partner for companies that fit them. Companies from China that has a bigger chance to give a good fit. And this weekend we will have a second matchmaking this year in Beijing, where Dutch companies are in, and where for each of the Dutch companies about 5 partners, potential partners, have been invited from China to discuss. And we think the chance of success is much bigger when you spend time on that instead of organizing a dinner or a meeting where you don't know beforehand who will come and if people come, if that are the right companies or people. So matchmaking, very important. And e-commerce is another commercial activity that came out of this platform. And as we heard yesterday, although it is still small in volume, it is very rapidly increasing in food and beverages. So what we do together is that we negotiate with the platforms here, the important ones like Tmall and the #1 store and JD.com, in the top priorities to work with. So they provide the infrastructure, but we together present ourselves as a Holland mall. Because Holland now had the food through Friesland Campina as an example is an example of safe food, quality food. So we bring in together with the companies involved under the umbrella of Holland, the hollandbuy.cn. So we leverage together on the brand, and we think that helps individual companies to launch their export and e-commerce activities. Because there are so many brands here on the internet, so you either have to be very strong and very well known in the world, or you have to do something else to become visible for the consumer. And we think this combination to leverage on the strength of Dutch Agri&Food together is an opportunity. We are currently preparing this, and it will be launched after summer. So to conclude, we say, when you look at it, the time is ripe to strengthen the collaboration in Agri&Food. And not only for the Netherlands, for many, but we certainly focus on it and are very active. Because, yeah, China is a big consumer market, and the Netherlands is very strong in food and agri to increase productivity and help improve quality. So this is an excellent combination of the two. And yes, we now have a long-term experience and some good examples in place to build on. And we try to join forces as much as possible, because China is a big country, and for many smaller companies, too big, I would say, to work at. And those of you, this is also one of the activities of the Holland Center, to have study tours to the Netherlands and meet the companies, see the sector. So it happened to be the end of June that we have an organized visit, a study tour to the Netherlands, to look in horticulture, in dairy, in food, meet with companies. So a well-organized study tour throughout our system, for which you are happy to join. And you see here in China there is a contact person, Jenny Liu, who is also available here, who is happy to give any further information how to join. So feel most welcome to visit our country in this sector and look for new opportunities for collaboration. Thank you very much. It happened to be that I will also chair the session this morning, so I may open the floor now for questions. So are there any questions or comments on this? Yes, please, I will.
You mentioned that Holland are the second largest agriculture exporter next to US. So what's the breakdown of the flour and the agriculture grains? What's the breakdown for those two items?
So to explain that, because it's almost difficult to understand, what is happening is the following. One part is the flours, and in the export, that in the total volume, in the total, I need to say in the total value of the more than 80 billion euros, 100 billion US dollars. I would say that's about, it depends upon prices, maybe 25–30%. That's flours, which goes around. The other part is especially in those sectors I defined. So horticulture, vegetables, the greenhouses we have is a very, very important export sector as well. Because they can produce a lot of value per square meter, and they export that high protein vegetable worldwide. And primarily within Europe, but also outside if possible. And then the third category is dairy. Dairy is an important one, like the baby milk powder now to China. We export a lot of dairy around the world in the various products. Processed products especially, because fresh milk it's not so easy to export. So that is the number 3. And horticulture and dairy. Horticulture is a bit bigger than dairy, so you have 25-30% flowers. We may have another 20%, 25% vegetables, especially horticulture. So then we are a bit more than half of the total export. And the other half is dairy, the important one. I would say half of the other half, so also at 25%. And the remainder part is meat, especially pork and poultry. So we don't produce beef, we have dairy. Beef is only a side product of dairy, of milk. And, but we have meat in pork and poultry. So roughly 25% flowers, 25% vegetables, 25% dairy, 25% pork and meat. It's not exactly right, the one is a bit bigger than the other, but that is the case. So it is not also not one sector, it is across the sectors. Yeah. Any other question? Yes, please.
I'm very interested in terms of the golden triangle of Dutch success as you shared with us. So you also mentioned that the private industry is kind of the key driver within the golden triangle. So I would like to understand a bit more how the private industry in this sense to be so active and be the pioneer or driving force in the triangle.
Yeah, indeed, private sector is very active in food and agri. And yeah, that has been built up over time. You see, in our case, the land is very expensive and the labor is very expensive. So in order for the private industry to survive in our conditions, they had to be innovative. They had to improve productivity. They had to improve quality and efficiency and what have you. So there has always been a drive to look at research and innovation. Because when they would keep on doing the same, they would be behind in competition and would not survive. So those difficult circumstances probably have been the most important drive to be active and be close to research. Once they did it and built it up over years, and they found out that that was a successful model, they were stimulated to do more. Because when you feel success, you like to increase. And so that's why the demand from the private industry to be close to research has come bigger over time. And nowadays, where we have many new potential technologies, often they are too expensive to develop for one individual company. Yeah, the bigger ones, they can, but the smaller ones, they cannot develop that technology for their own. So there is a lot of research necessary to develop that, to bring it further, and then at the end, each individual company takes it for his own and make products out of it. So with the more complex technology, that's another stimulation, another stimulus for the industry to work closely with research. It also asks quite a bit from research, because in the beginning people think, oh, our freedom has gone because the private industry will come and tell what we have to do. That's not the case. Because the private industry likes to have researchers being as creative as possible, because that's why they come. And for instance, in Wageningen, where we now have most of the research in that public-private partnership, at the same time, the number of publications went up. They did not go down, they went up, because they have more money for research to do that. So there needs to be a reason for it. Secondly, when you start, it needs to bring success, because otherwise companies will not pay for it. But once that's going on, it increases. And that's why it is now formally included in the top sectors as well, where even the private companies, for quite a big part of the research, have the major say in what type of research needs to be done. So should we spend more research on food safety or on quality or on productivity or what have you. So the voice of the industry, the possible voice influence has become even bigger over the years. And we think that will further grow. Also, let's say when we support the export, because the world is big, the world is different, so we also need a lot of research and collaboration in improving our export. So we think this will not stop again. This will continue and will further increase. I think it is time for the next speaker. Oh.
Can you take this?
Thank you. So to talk about this golden triangle, I'm interested in the role of the government in this golden triangle. Because for the Netherlands to be more innovative, what kind of role the government should play? Because we understand the partnership between the private sector and the knowledge institutes. So what is the role of the government? Does it play a role in facilitating the communication between the private sector and the knowledge institutes? What kind of role it is for the government?
Yeah. Also in our system, there is still a big role for the government. And that is different. Yes, to help bring the parties together, but also to provide money for the more risky research. Early stage research is quite risky for individual companies because you do not know yet whether it will lead to innovation and products. Well, in that first stage, the government puts in more money relatively than the industry. So, for instance, in our fundamental research, it is 75% government money, or 80% government money, and only 20% industry money. And when you reach the more applied stage, it switches. It is about 80% private industry money and 20% government money. So in the early stage, you need the government a lot for funding, and when it is successful, the industry takes over. So on an average, we do in public-private about 50% government, 50% industry, but in the early stage it's 80-20, and in the final stage it's 20-80, roughly to speak. Secondly, a government is also very important for the relationship between countries, to, let's say, support and to establish relationships. Because, well, take for instance here in China, our government plays an important role. And with us, in the early stage, the government in the 50s, 60s had a very big role, because at that time the private industry did not invest so much. So to keep things going in an early stage, it's also the government. And I see here the role changing as well. Here the government plays a much bigger role and should be to help develop and stimulate developments. But you see companies already more and more important here, to be more and more important here as well. So I can see that in 20 years from now, the role between government and private industry will also be different here than it is nowadays. So in each stage of development, you need a good relationship, a good collaboration between the government and the private industry. But the exact role is different over time, I would say. Yeah?
谢谢. Hi, excuse me. I have a quick question. So thanks for the good presentation. I'm just wondering, so could you share some of your opinion about unique or competitive advantages in lanolin dairy production compared to other European countries, such as France, Denmark, Ireland? So what do you think is very special or unique competitive advantages for Holland? And also, since the EU, the milk quota has become a history, so maybe the milk volume will increase in the next several years. So what's the impact on Holland dairy?
Yeah. When you ask a Dutch person what is the difference between our product and others, we always say, of course, we have the best. But what is the difference? We have the strongest tradition in food and agri. So and in our system, the entire chain, production chain, from the supply of the ingredients up to the final consumer products, are very closely linked to each other in dairy. So that means that we know what is happening, we know what feed is going in. So when something is wrong with the product, we have a better tracking and tracing system than many other countries. So I think productivity, but also that quality, that food safety is something special and has been organized in a good way in the Netherlands. There we also benefit from the fact that we are a small country in region, because everything is closely together. We can easily organize it than in a big country. The next step, yes, we had a quota system in the Netherlands, which means that farmers could produce more, but they were not paid for the additional milk, so they did not produce more. And that quota system, after 30 years, 3-0, has finished the 1st of April this year. So now countries are free again to produce more. And that will happen. We will produce more. But there are limits. Also in the Netherlands, we have environmental limits to produce more. So that means that there will be more production, but it will not be an explosion of production. People expect, for instance in the Netherlands, that in the coming years we will produce 20%, 20% more in the coming 5 years. So yes, there will become more dairy on the market, and that part will especially be exported outside the EU, because the biggest demand, increase in demand, is not within the EU, but is outside the EU. So I expect a lot of increase in international export of dairy products. Thank you. I think...
Thank you for your presentation. You mentioned the similarity between the Netherlands and China in terms of land size and per capita. The Netherlands is strong at intensive production, animal production, agricultural production. Are you sharing also with China all the matters related to waste treatments, which is a very big issue in China at the moment and growing?
I didn't catch what?
The waste treatments, because of all this intensive production.
Yeah. You see, there are always disadvantages of a system which you have to overcome. So when you are very intensive, you produce a kilogram of food very efficient, because we have the lowest CO2 emissions of food production per kilogram of food in the world. Because we are very productive. We only need a few animals to produce the milk or to produce the meat. But everything is concentrated in a small area. So there you have, for instance, the manure being left. And there you have a disadvantage of the manure. So either you're able to process it and let's say, use it again, or you create a problem. Well, in the 90s, we had a big problem because we did not have any issues to, let's say, reduce the waste. Over time, then, technology is being developed, and then we are able to process much more. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to grow. So that's always a balance when you are so much in the front, a balance of those advantages and disadvantages. And of course, when you work together, people... You share that. You share what is necessary to come to that level. And that's why we also have always visits to the Netherlands. Because when you tell, it's difficult to tell all the aspects of a system, how it works together, and what are the pluses and the minuses. But when the groups comes to the Netherlands, they can see and they can discuss. And they can also see how you are working on solving the problem of that time. And in each stage of development, you have new problems, let's say, in your system. At the same time, there is also new technology coming up or being developed to help to improve. So it goes step by step. And yes, that is fully shared. Yes, now we have a problem because I'm the chairman to keep the time and you give all the questions. So don't blame me then. Yes, please.
Sorry, 我想最后问一个问题。
So my question is related to the previous questions. And still about the research findings, how to convert that into how to commercialize it. And I want to talk about China. A lot of researches are sponsored or financed by the government, but ownership of the research findings belongs to the research institutes, universities, or the government. This ownership has become a barrier for the commercialization of such research findings. So how does Holland deal with this problem?
Yeah, very good questions. The first one, let's start with the last one. Let's say how to commercialize. That's a very important aspect, because when you keep all the IPO for yourself or for the government, companies cannot use it. And at the end of the day, no one uses it. So in our public-private partnerships, it is always being discussed beforehand who will own the IPO. It's beforehand. And there are models that you share it, or there are models that the government or the research institutes can keep it, or there are models that the private industry, who is involved in that project and finances the project, can take it. Very important is that you discuss it beforehand and that you set up the model to how to share the benefits. And in our system, in the beginning, everyone, also researchers, thought, we keep it because that will bring us a lot of money. But then it doesn't happen. So we are more and more, we have learned to make it available to the private industry, because they should be able to market it and then take a share. When they are successful, pay 1% or 2% or 10% to the research institutes as well for the new research in the future. That's a much better model, because then a private company likes to share. When they are successful, they have something to share. But when they have to pay upfront a big amount of money to get that IPO, they won't do it. That's too risky. So I think being flexible as much as possible and an easy model to keep it going, that's very important. The first one, how to, let's say, come into that stage. That's why we think applied research is important. Bigger companies have their own R&D and can make it available to their company. But in food and agri, you have many smaller companies, and they do not have an R&D department. And that's why applied research, with the three parties involved, government, private industry, and science, is very important to bridge that gap between fundamental and applied research in the field. So that's a very, very important stage. It does not bring you a lot of publications, scientific publications, but it helps you to get the product available or the new process available in the field. So applied research is something I think needs to be done also more in China as a bridge between universities and the field.
Professor Aalt, we can have one more question because Mr. Nanini go to the bathroom. Yeah. So,
okay.
We can allow for one more question. Any more questions?